I'm going to call the BUHS number 6 meeting for December 17th, 2018 to order at now 7:02. So we're called to order. And the first thing on our agenda is the FY20 budget review. So this will be our second review of the budget. And we went over it pretty in-depthly over a lot of things 2 weeks ago, but I will turn it over to Bob to...
Okay, well, actually, there's not really anything new. We're right about at the spot we were 2 weeks ago when we reviewed it. We have been through, the Finance Committee has been through all the expense parts of the budget, both the BAMs, the high school, the Career Center, and the district-wide. We were hoping by this time, by the time we got to this meeting, we would have revenue or figures from the state primarily regarding the equalized pupil count, which is very important to make this all work its way down to what's the impact on the tax rate, which is the bottom line. So equalized pupils numbers we do not have yet. I don't know that we are going to get them in the next couple of days, but it needs to be pretty soon for sure. When you get your equalized students, then you can figure your spending per pupil and what's the impact on the tax rates for the various towns. And at that point, there may need to be some slight adjustment in the budget, even though we've already kind of gone through the expense things. I just want to make it clear that the expense side of the budget is up a little bit, 2.9%. However, it is still primarily level funded and level service as we've asked for years. Discretionary expenses are up minimally, if at all, and primarily the reason for the increase is a large extent is negotiated salary increases that are part of the union contract, and also 10% health plan increase overall. And that adds a lot of dollars. The payroll is by far the biggest part of our business. So we're same place we were 2 weeks ago when I went all through this. I could go through specifics for the schools if anybody wishes. But we need to really get more information on the revenue side and how it's going to work for our tax rates for all the towns before we can proceed.
Can I add to that?
Yeah.
I was at a meeting in Montpelier today with a number of superintendents, and one superintendent said that due to issues with the data collection website, reporting system that they use at the state, they just submitted their data last week. So it will be, I would say, quite a few more days before we're going to get those equalized pupil numbers.
Likely to be after the first of the year?
We're hoping not, but it certainly won't be before the December break.
Yeah, because there's some dates after the beginning of the year where we have to we have to start moving forward.
Correct.
Yeah.
Setting tuition rates, the whole. Yeah.
So the Finance Committee has not met since the last board meeting, but again, we're kind of at a standstill right now, budget-wise.
Does anybody have any questions related to the budget that we know?
I'm sorry. Go ahead. Well, when it's my turn.
Go ahead.
In view of the lack of revenue information, and you've just referred to this, there are other things that have to happen with the budget that are now more or less on hold. From the standpoint of the public, and people trying to come to understand where we are in the budget process, how do you see things unfolding from here? Particularly, at the last meeting, there had been mention of a public information meeting that could have happened tonight, but I guess it didn't.
Right.
So I'm just wondering how can members of the public at this point anticipate and then take advantage of opportunities to learn more and have their say?
Well, our hope would be, and Lyle, you can correct me if you think this is unrealistic, is that the first January meeting, which would be on the 7th of January, our regular board meeting, will be the early start, 6 o'clock public hearing. And if we don't have numbers by then, I'm not quite sure what to tell you we would do, but we're hopeful that we may. That's still 2.5 weeks away or so. And isn't it statutory that those numbers are supposed to be available by the end of December at the latest?
Well, December 15th is when they're
Well, it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's gone by, but that's a good question. Well, that's what we're kind of hoping for right now. We'll be able to have that information. Once we get that information, we can react pretty quickly, change-wise. We had to do that last year because there was a big change in the equalized student number that we needed to rework some things for.
And I think, I mean, I will say too, I think that Frank and the Finance Committee has really anticipated everything that we could possibly anticipate. And then once we get those numbers from the state, it's a matter of plugging them in and running the math. And then we'll know really quickly as soon as those numbers come in. So that'll be good as soon as we have them. But we can't do anything until we have those numbers. But we've figured everything else out that we can figure out. So. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Let me also say, though, that it would be really great if the public information meeting were well publicized. The only way I knew it wasn't happening tonight was by showing up at 6 o'clock and seeing that all the lights were turned out. So I think there is room for improvement on public notification.
I believe it was warned in the paper as 7 o'clock.
I couldn't find it anywhere online, including at the WSESU website.
Oh, I read it in the paper, I think, the other day, but I didn't look online. But we'll be mindful of that.
Definitely. Thank you. Sean?
Well, I was just wondering if I jump ahead to new business.
Mm-hmm.
It says the FY20 budget action needed. Is that
I think-
different now than what we're
Yeah, that
going
would be
to
different
do?
now. I think that was anticipated that
Yeah,
we were really hopeful after the snafu from last year that
Yeah.
we would have numbers. And I know
Yeah.
that after our last meeting, I spoke to Frank, and he was hopeful that even if he had numbers this morning, he probably could have given us pretty firm numbers by the time we met tonight.
yeah.
So,
And the other thing is, I'd like to make a comment if I could, because it always seems to me that everybody knows that the numbers are supposed to be here on 12/15, and they never are. But I sort of look at it like they're probably doing the absolute best that they can in Montpelier. And they probably run into problems that are unforeseen. So I hear a little bit of vague blaming the state. And I think it's counterproductive. I think they're probably working as hard as they possibly can to get it done, and it's not happening. But this is not just us, it's probably the whole state is like this. So, a veiled comment that it's the state's fault, from my viewpoint, does nobody any good at all.
Well, regardless of whose fault it is, it's now second or third year, and it happens other years, and it comes right down to the wire, and maybe the whole thing the schedule needs to be adjusted, but, we have to work backwards from, as it stands right now, work backwards from our annual meeting date, so many days back in the morning, and all of a sudden you're back in December. And,
Exactly, yeah.
It's a challenge,
No,
yeah.
that's a really good point.
The AOE is understaffed in general, usually, and then they get these issues that was just mentioned, and it's a challenge. And I certainly didn't mean to implicate that there are people up there that are just sitting around on their hands, not doing anything. But
Well, no, I certainly wasn't.
it does get kind of frustrating after now 2 or 3 years in a row.
Well, I think it also prohibits us from doing our due diligence and thoroughly
Right.
going through it, and the initial view of the budget, and then the final numbers to put it through as well.
Well, what you just said, I find really interesting. If the AOE is understaffed, then it's probably the responsibility of legislators and the governor to make sure, in order for us to do our job, we need those numbers, like you said. And if we don't get them, then maybe they need more help.
But we have, clearly, as I said, we have thoroughly gone through and vetted the expense side of the
Yeah.
equation, which is is really the heavy lifting in terms of time involved.
So it's the
And
revenue
that,
side.
that
because
would
of
only
the
change
equalized
if,
students.
again, if we get a wildly different or a significantly different number that we have to work with revenue-wise and trying to maintain the tax base.
Yeah.
And I also would like to make it clear that it's not like we've got a little pot somewhere of money that we can just say, okay, well, if that goes bad with the equalized students, we'll pull some out of there. We will have to take a look at programs and expenditures a little bit.
No, and historically, that's exactly what happened last year.
Exactly what happened.
And that was not a good, couple of meetings and.
It was a rushed decision is what
Go
happened.
through. It was
It was a
bad.
rushed decision, and
Yeah.
some people felt slighted.
Yeah, it was really bad, so. yeah.
So part of my report out, Southeast superintendents met with legislators, Wyndham County legislators on Friday, and it was reported out at that meeting that there are 22 openings at the Agency of Ed. So they are certainly understaffed.
Any other questions, thoughts related to the budget for tonight? Okay, seeing none. Why don't we move to the clerk's report and approval of the minutes of December 3rd. They were distributed, I know that. Is there a motion? Okay, let's get it moved and seconded, and then we'll do corrections.
I move that we approve the minutes of December 3rd, 2018.
Second.
Moved and seconded? Okay, corrections, deletions, changes we need to make. Steve?
Under my report, it says members of the school community attended training for the Stop the Bleed presentation. They haven't attended that yet. That's upcoming in January.
Okay.
Oh, I are correct.
Yeah.
And actually, I did send a couple items on to Barb, and I don't think she has put out the revised minutes yet. One of them was the statute that Lila had given me on the student matter, and the other one was that Ian was here, but he's not listed, so I'll get those corrected.
Right, any other additions, deletions, or corrections we need to make to the minutes? All in favor of approving the minutes as amended, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstentions? No. Okay, great. Do any board members have any communications to share this evening? Seeing none, we'll move on. And we'll move to recognition of groups and individual visitors. And I know Franz is here, and you're just here related to budget stuff, or is there other things you'd like to tell us about today?
Just budgeting first.
Okay, well, you're welcome anytime, so please keep coming. And
I'm here, yes.
just,
Leslie Bach.
yeah, is there anything you want to talk about specifically?
No,
or-
I'm just here to listen.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right. So there's no other individuals, visitors, no other reports from them. So is there a motion to enter consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, so we'll start with finance, building, and transportation.
Well, I kind of wandered into that during the budget presentation.
Yeah.
The Finance Committee has not met since our last board meeting. And we don't have a meeting date definite right this moment because obviously as soon as we have something to work with, we'll meet quickly.
Yep. Thank you to everybody. WSESU Finance Committee. I know Russ isn't here, but I was at the last WSESU board meeting, and the WSESU board approved the budget for the WSESU. So they did that at the last meeting, which was like 2 days after our last meeting. So the meeting for the supervisory union wide, that budget was approved by that board. So, and as far as I know, that's really all that the finance committee from the SU had to report on. Planning and policy,
Has not met.
teacher curriculum committee,
Has not met.
BAMS committee,
Has not met.
career center.
Has not met.
All right, so that was fast. All right, so let's move to administrative reports. And why don't we start the fire with the students?
All right. Well, we are halfway through our Feed the Thousands campaign.
The collections will be ending this week. It started off pretty well. We filled our display case in the social studies hallway. Although if you look at it now, it will be empty because it has been collected by thousands. And so this year it's a competition between the grades to see who can raise the most food, and the winner gets a trophy and an hour DJing on WTSA. So the stakes are pretty high, and the freshmen are currently in the lead. So hopefully, seniors will pick it up a little bit, but we'll see. And so in our long block ACE, we're trying to get that to happen, and we have, our biggest problem was finding stuff for kids to do during this new time, and we have gone around to teachers and faculty and asked them, not officially, but just like person to person, if they are willing to run activities during this time, and a large portion of them have thought that was a great idea and are willing to, so that is looking on the upside for us.
Thank you. All right. We move to BAMs.
Hi everyone. I'm going to start with some holiday season things that are happening in the school. Team Draco, it's a 7th grade team this year. They do an annual, what they call Geese Giving, which is it's kind of termed after the way geese behave, that they're very loyal to their group, and if one kind of veers off, they try to get it back on pace. And so the theme of Geese Giving is kind of giving back, helping people out, and they spent a couple of days last week, and I think more time preparing, and they do things like cooked a bunch of stew and brought it to the local food shelf, did research projects on how to make their environment. They did research on climate change and studying the effects of plastics on animals, and then presented a really nice presentation to me around one way that we can help the environment at a local level in the school, which was essentially purchase a fountain that can be used with the bottles, with the filtered water, where people can put the bottles up to the fountain and get nice cold filtered water to help save plastic bottles. So they made a really compelling, they had research projects on display, and it was really great. Really proud of them. And then they capped the day off with a nice meal that they cooked together and served each other. So were any of you on Team Draco? You remember doing that?
Yeah, I remember Geese Giving.
Yeah.
I wrote a poem for it actually.
Yeah. So
it's lots of fun.
yeah. So it's a great little annual thing that that team does. Also, along with the holiday theme, that we're also participating in Project Feed. We raised 230 pounds of food last week, and there's a little competition between teachers, and teachers are volunteering, and the losing teachers get to eat some crazy food combination. So that's been a lot of fun, and so Project Feed for the schools will end at the end of this week. And I reported last time we were working on a holiday shop, and that's been a huge success again. And our former BAM students probably remember the holiday shop too. It's essentially a place where there's a bunch of a bunch of items that are donated, and the kids purchase them with what we call BAMS bucks. And the kids were really excited. You know, a lot of kids leaving like, I got half my Christmas shopping done or holiday shopping done during this thing. And there's volunteers who wrap the gifts that they get. So it's really nice. And there were a ton of things given away. So those are some really nice things happening. We're also doing a little door decorating contest between all the advisories in the school. So. And that's themed around our social contract. So we're having a lot of fun with those things. Another really nice student recognition. A new thing we did this year, we've started this year, is to do an honors luncheon we varied honor roll recognition over the past, and student leadership came up with an idea to do a luncheon, get local businesses to donate some food items, and then recognize the kids with certificates, a VIP lunch, and we also, beyond honor roll, we recognize students who had received what we call HOW recognition, which is like habits of work. It's a new area that the Midland High School assess, and so we selected students who were making significant gains or progress in habits of work. So that was really great. There were 3 local businesses who donated food. Against the Grain, the Marina, Vermont Inn Pizza, and the Vermont Country Deli all donated pizza, salads, macaroni and cheese, and the kids, it seemed like they were really happy with the recognition. And I wanted to just recognize Jessica Montanieri, who did, along with some other staff members, but Jessica did an extraordinary amount of work getting it prepared, and I was really happy with it. Last but not least, we had a dance on Friday night, and we've been doing parent social events during the dances. We call it BAM's Community Connections, and Eric Johnson from the Brattleboro Police Department came and did a presentation on internet safety. And I would say there were 15 to 20 parents there, and it was really great information. So very thankful to the Brat PD and Mr. Johnson for coming, and for all the parents who attended. So that's all I have. Any questions? All right.
Great, thanks. Move down one to the high school.
Sure. Last week, we had our German club and our German students attended a pop concert at Conval High School in Peterborough with a German pop star named Vincent Weiss. And there were about 300 students there. And evidently, he is in the German top 40. I've never heard his music. He is doing a major North American tour, and one of his stops on his tour is Conval High School in Jaffrey, or Peterborough. So the students said he was great. Frau Sebastian loved him as well. And I'm not sure, I haven't heard it on the radio yet, but I look forward to hearing it at some point. Our music department, speaking of music, continues to do great work with our community. We've had 15 singers made the Connecticut Valley District Chorus and 12 selected for District Jazz Band. They earned that acceptance through auditions held last week in Chester. They will be performing at the District Winter Festival in Townsend in early February. Also, 7 musicians earned acceptance in the New England Music Festival Honors Ensemble following our auditions in Hartford, Connecticut. They'll rehearse and perform in that festival in Woodstock, Connecticut in March. Finally, members of our band played in the Green River Carol Sing in Guilford on Sunday. That will be broadcast on TSN Christmas Eve. That's always a great event. It's always great to hear our musicians accompanying the singers there. Tomorrow, we're doing our first coffee with the principal from 8 to 9 tomorrow morning. It's a chance for parents to come in and talk about their concerns at the school, what they want to see, what they like about the school. And hopefully we're going to use the agenda we developed tomorrow to set up more parent education throughout the year. So we'll be able to continue to do that on a monthly basis. So I'm looking forward to that. You may have noticed, if you were here in the daylight, that the practice field renovation has started. There's a whole lot of new dirt. There's a whole lot less trees, and they're doing a fine job getting that ready. Somebody reminded me that they could not plant grass in November. I said, you're right, we can't plant grass in November. That will start in the spring. Robert Clark also reports that he is doing the permitting process for the new maintenance garage. Hoping to break ground in the spring on that as well. We did find out that we do have to go through that 250 process again. We did that for the construction project. They are going to have us go through the 250 process to do the maintenance garage, but that's on track right now. I have a couple of staff changes to share. First, I would like to announce that mathematics teacher Kathleen Perry has put in her notice to resign at the end of the school year. She's been a longtime member of BUHS. She's been a longtime member living in the community and also working in the community. She's going to be sorely missed. We'll begin the replacement process in the new year, but I would ask the board to accept Ms. Perry's resignation effective at the end of June this year.
Is there a motion?
So moved. Accept the resignation of Kathleen Perry with regret.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Thank you. And you may recall that Ben Lord is taking a leave of absence next semester. We've done some interviews. We've interviewed 3 candidates for this position, and we are recommending that Jacob Smith be hired as the long-term science teacher sub. Jacob currently works at BUHS as the science assistant, and he's going to take on this new challenge. He's thinking about this as a career change as well, so he wanted to try it out, see what it was like. So I would ask that the board accept Jacob Smith as a long-term science sub for the next semester.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye.
We'll also begin looking for a replacement for Jacob for the balance of the school year as well. So that's all I have. Any questions? Thanks.
Excellent.
Just a comment, I was at the program at the church in Guilford and Green River, and those 3 students and Mr. Rice really did an excellent job. I mean, it was really cool. And you can hear it on WTSA on Christmas Eve. So.
Excellent. Thank you. All right, Career Center.
Sure. First of all, I'm happy to let you know that our newly developed LNA program received final approval last Tuesday, December 11th, from the Vermont Board of Nursing, so that we can run the program. A very lengthy process that has gone on, from purchasing equipment, working with area healthcare providers, getting clinical sites and instructors in place, and developing a small curriculum and things to start with, one of the binders involved. So they've been very busy. So special thanks to Kathleen Forrester, the new instructor of the program, and Paul Cohen that's done a lot of work also with that program. So that'll be starting this next semester as a double block program, blocks 1 and 2, that it will run. And also like to recognize 2 student Rotarians from the business department, Gavin Waite and Trevor Kipp, for assisting the Brattleboro Rotary Club and wrapping over 350 gifts that will be given out at elderly homes in our community. If you notice, they were on the front page of the Reformer last Monday, I believe, also.
Ray, if I could just interrupt, there's other student Rotarians that are BUHS students that were also there. They just didn't get.
They didn't get the wrap, I know.
They were in the paper, but there's other BUHS students that are student Rotarians that were there too, which was a wonderful thing. They all jumped in and helped.
Try to have a number of them attend the meetings, so that's great. And the Career Center's Project Feed the Thousands campaign went extremely well last week. The Career Center alone donated thousands of items to Fill the Bus campaign. That was on December 14th. And we collected from area schools. And we actually had 2 programs, electronics and engineering, that donated over 25 items per student within those programs. So the director gets to feed the thousands of them this week. It's a little competition that we had. So it went great. The kids really stepped up. In fact, one classroom in the math department, a smaller classroom of 7 students, donated 85 items per student for one class. So that's all I have.
I just have one question, if I could. You had been working on that nursing program you'd mentioned that a number of meetings ago.
Yes.
So that was quite a thing to.
It was an extremely long process, and last board meeting 2 weeks ago, I went over that they were coming down for the inspection of our site and the evaluation of our curriculum, and that we had all our contracts in place. So that happened between last meeting and December. It happened actually December 10th on Monday, and then they had their board meeting on December 11th, and they finally let us know that we received final approval. It was recommended to their board, so it's a lengthy process. In fact, Becky Steele at BTC has contacted us and asked about the process we went through, as they may be going through the process. So it's been a lot of work.
Excellent, thank you. Central office.
Sure.
So as I mentioned earlier, last Friday, Southeast Superintendents in Southeast goes from Hartford to the north to us in the south. Superintendents met with legislators. We talked about issues that are facing educators today. We talked quite a bit about pre-K, and we also talked quite a bit about career and technical ed and some of the issues that we hope legislators can help us with, which is right now there's such competition for students between a high school and a career and tech ed program, and trying to figure out a different funding method so that we're not feeling like we're taking students from each other or in competition. We're trying to do what's best for all students and not let funding be one of the driving forces. So that was one of the points of the conversation. Our human resource director, Peggy Lemna, is retiring at the end of the year. We're in middle of interviews for that position, and hopefully by next meeting I'll be able to announce to you whom we have hired. Had some excellent applicants and some really good interviews, so we're narrowing it down. And as I already reported, I had that data collection information for you. It is going to be great. So, that's it.
Excellent. And I don't have a report for tonight, so we can move to unfinished business, which is an Act 46 discussion. It's listed as unfinished business. I don't know if there's anything really new to report at this point.
Since last meeting.
Since our last meeting.
I think we reported last time the organizational meeting has been warned for January 9th, 7 o'clock, UHS Gymnasium.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
this is BCTV cameraman Ian Keel. What was the organizational meeting? Is there a little more detail on that?
Sure. It's been warned. If you go to the State Board of Education or the Agency of Ed, you'll note that there are draft articles of agreement for Wyndham Southeast. Within those draft articles of agreement, there is a specific warning for an organizational meeting. It has to happen within 40 days, I believe, 90 days of November 30th. We wanted it as soon as we possibly could because at that organizational meeting, transitional board members are sworn in and they will begin the process of combining all the budgets that all the individual towns have been working on. Budgeting is a top priority because until we have dates set for elections and the annual meeting, we can't know when we're going to be passing budgets, and until budgets are passed, pretty much principals' hands are tied when it comes to any program development, any new hiring, that type of thing. So we got the earliest date we possibly could. We had to get permission from the Agency of Ed for our date, and other districts had already booked January 2, January 3, so we did January 9, which actually our thought process with that is that there is no other board meeting scheduled for that night, so we won't be bumping any other local board. So January 9.
And Mr. Chair, I just had one other question. And maybe Lyle will answer it. Will this board be putting forward its budget, or will a unified board be putting forward a unified budget?
The transitional board, which is made up of 2 members from each board, including this board, so Guilford, Brattleboro, Dummerston, Putney, BU6, each have 2 members in what's called a transitional board. They review the budget and present that budget to the newly elected merged board. It'll be the newly elected merged board that actually presents the full budget to the electorate, but it is the main job of the transitional board to put that budget together and then present it to the new board members.
If you can indulge me one more question, that's still aiming for presenting a school budget at the general town meeting time for most towns?
That will again depend upon elections because there are very specific dates that are set out in the Articles of Agreement about how long between the organizational meeting, when that election is set, and then that meeting, the annual meeting date is set. All of those things are laid out in the Articles of Agreement.
And one last question. So, is it a true statement that perhaps school budgets for Wyndham Southeast Supervisory Union are just a little bit different this year because of that?
There will not be individual school budgets. There will be a merged district budget.
So essentially, the way that we understand it is that the transitional board, one of the things that it will be doing is taking the 5 budgets from those 5 boards, merging all of them together into one unified budget, and then presenting that to the newly elected unified board when those elections happen, and then they will present that at an annual meeting, very similar probably to the BUHS annual meeting that used to happen in February, that will still happen in February this year, that happens in February, but that will be a separate meeting. So on top of the budget process slowing down some things for the principals and hires or program planning or those contracts and things like that, it also has the potential of slowing down town budgets, because until the school budgets are done, the towns can't figure out their budgets, because in so many ways the school budget is such a large portion. So whatever percentage for that town is that it will be. So it's a bigger job.
Thanks for answering my questions. I don't usually talk from behind the camera. I just assume
they're
there may
good
be
questions
people
and
watching who
clarifying.
would like a little more detail. Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you for asking the clarifying questions. Rick?
Yeah, Rick or Lyle, how is the slate of candidates for the final board created, and when would that be finalized so that people could approach them, or, open forum, that kind of?
So on January 9th, at that organizational meeting, one of the jobs of at that meeting is to set the date of the elections. I'm hoping that will be on town meeting day. After a meeting with town clerks from each of the towns, they really would appreciate not having a separate election some other time, but it is one of the jobs of that first transitional board meeting to set that date. Once that date is set, then there are specific 6 Mondays, and petitions have to be due. And when we were looking at that, it looked like there would be a very, very short turnaround between setting the date on January 9th and probably petitions being due January 28th. But we have petitions ready to go and sent to the town clerk's offices as soon as the organizational meeting happens and that date is set.
So,
And then it'll be dependent on who decides to take out a petition and run for election, and then there'll be an election hopefully on town meeting day, and that's what will decide who this new merged board is.
Is the makeup of the merged board and the transition board the same though? Is there going to be 2, or is
It's going to be 2, but it's only 2 from each town as opposed to 2 from each board. So the transitional board will actually be 10 people, where the merged board will only be 8 people, because it'll be 2 people from Dummerston, Guilford, Putney, and Brattleboro. Whereas the transitional board will have 2 members from each one of the town boards and 2 of us. And in the way that the statute reads, it's the chair and the clerk of each board is the transitional board. So Sean and I will serve on this transitional board. Whether we choose to run or not for the merged board is a whole other conversation and question that we individually, everybody will have to add and do what they want to do. And then my understanding on the elections is that for the merged board, the 8-member merged board, is that everybody in all 4 towns will vote for no more than 2 from each town. So as a person from Dummerston, if Bob and I were both running from Brattleboro, you would have a say on whether or not we got elected, because you would vote for us also. And it's the way that they can do it with the numbers, as far as the population numbers and the number of representatives, is that everybody in all 4 towns gets to vote on all 8 candidates. So it'll be, don't vote for no more from 2 from Brattleboro, no more than 2 from Putney and Dummerston and Guilford, and everybody will vote. And it'll be the top 2 vote getters in each town that will be the new merged board.
So just to be clear,
Yeah.
you got a slate, say you got 5 people in Brattleboro, I'm up at town meeting, I'll vote for 2 of them.
Yep.
Same in Putney, they'll make these 7 people,
And then running
I'll
for
vote for
Putney,
2 of them.
and the 2 top vote getters from each town. So, and it could be in, for instance, somebody from Brattleboro could have the 3rd highest number of votes from all 4 towns,
They're out.
but they're out because it's only the top 2 vote getters from Brattleboro that'll be on the new merged board. Or it could be that 4 people in Dummerston got the 4 highest number of votes, but
So 2.
it's only the top
Cut
2
off is 2.
from each town.
But there will be 2 from each town.
There'll be 2 from each town. Yeah.
Just a clarification regarding the BUHS annual meeting. In that business at that meeting has always been totally related to the ensuing year, would that not become a moot?
Right. It is not, at this point, legal for any board to make any determination on anything that happens after July 1st. Your job is to finish out this year. So
Right.
So we'll still have an annual meeting in February as planned, BUHS annual meeting, but all we'll be doing is reviewing what happened this past year and what's happening up until June 30th. So, but there'll be no decisions or no budget discussion for after June 30th. It'll just be sort of it'll be the review part of what happened.
Which we
So
have
residents
not
can't make
generally
any
done.
motions from the floor either then?
No.
There's nothing to,
There's not, because there's nothing to make a decision about, it's just but we by statute have to have a meeting to inform the electorate what we did. So that's what we'll be doing in February, as part of our annual meeting, there'll just be no planning beyond that. Shasha?
I have the warning of that January 9th meeting in front of me, and I can't find in all the 12 items of the warning when the date will be set for the election.
That's because the transitional board has to make that decision. The transitional board decides that at the January 9th meeting.
How come it's not on the warning?
I don't know, I haven't seen the warning, to be honest with you.
Because they have everything else, whether it's going to be Australian ballots, the compensation to the officers, and it's actually a little bit confusing. But it doesn't mention anything about setting an election date on the 9th. And I actually called my town clerk today, and they said there was going to be a meeting on the 9th and also on the 10th. And at the 10th, on the 10th, which is a Thursday, it would be the setting of the election date.
So it says to determine a date and location for the first annual meeting, all subsequent annual meetings which shall not be earlier than February 1st and not later than June 1st. Australian ballot, to determine whether to elect members of the new Union District Board by ballot. You're right, I do not see it somewhere though. I have read that, so I'll continue to look for that.
Because hopefully everything can be done on the 9th.
Yeah, that was one of the
Wouldn't
clarifying.
have to have a meeting on the 10th.
Yeah, I mean, my assumption would be, because we'll be meeting in the evening on the 9th, that the 10th would be when the town clerks would be made aware of that and have petitions available on the 10th.
And
That would be
actually,
my,
there was a question, if I may, from my town clerk, and she was asking whether they had to be at the meeting of the 9th because there was some discussion that a checklist had to be presented at that meeting. And they didn't know whether it had to be done in person or.
We had met with the town clerks. I thought we had cleared that up, but it sounds like we need to meet with them again.
Well, our town clerk wasn't there, so it was the assistant town clerk.
Oh, okay.
But
That's
she said, do we have to be there on the 9th with the checklist?
Yes.
In hand.
Yes.
So,
Yep.
so maybe our town clerk is aware of that.
Yep. Yep.
any other questions that we can try to clarify related to that? Related to Act 46 and the plan going forward?
if I could,
Yeah.
it's a little bit of a redundant question, but does it seem as if the election for the directors will happen on town meeting day?
It will be determined at that January 9th meeting. That would be my recommendation after meeting with the town clerks. The town clerks would prefer to do both elections because there will be the election for board members to finish out till June 30th and elections of new board members at the same time.
Did you have a question, Bob?
Board members to finish out, they have to be re-elected to finish out?
Yeah, some people's terms are gonna expire in March, and they'd have to,
okay.
those seats have to be filled until the end.
Okay, just the ones whose terms is...
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. If your term's not up in March, then it's not an issue, but if your term is up in March, then somebody has to run for that seat and be in that seat until June 30th. On top of, so.
So I'll ask one more question. At the WSESU, the meeting that we had here on Thursday, Vernon was here. So what's going to happen to Vernon in the new transitional board? They won't have a representative. So
at this time, we are still, we will be the merged board, WSESU, and Vernon. The State Board of Ed did not make any determination on our status as a supervisory union. So therefore, we needed to pass that supervisory union budget. Vernon will have board members. Until the statute is changed, Vernon would have 3 board members from their board, and the merged board would have 3 board members as well.
So the WSESU board?
Yes. So there'll be a 6-member board, 3 representing Vernon's 200 plus, and 3 representing the other 2,200 kids. I suspect that we're going to need to take that up because that doesn't seem
Proportionate.
Right, yeah. Well, and I think you said too also at the last SU meeting that at any, or maybe it was somebody from Vernon that said it, that at any point in time, because Vernon's status is still, nothing's changed, but the State Board of Education could make a determination about Vernon at any point in time. And if they make a determination to put them into a unified district someplace, then that would change and potentially dissolve the SU. That if Vernon is placed someplace else, if the State Board of Education decides to do that. There's a lot of what ifs out there about Vernon's status still, in a lot of ways. And from talking to them that night, they're not feeling real confident either because nobody knows, because no final decisions have been made. But the State Board of Education has reserved the right to make the decision at some point.
Is the SU budget finalized, locked tight, or something could come down the road and just turn it upside down and need to be reevaluated?
It shouldn't. Nothing should change. It's done. It's passed, and so it's all set. And then so there's nothing to change unless something dramatically changed, like i.e. if say the State Board of Education decided to move Vernon out of it, then that would dramatically change it, and we'd have to redo the SU what the SU portion of that budget to signify the Vernon piece.
But when you come and put all these budgets together and stuff, and you don't know how they're all going to go together yet, you could find yourself with an extremely unbudgeted number.
Yeah.
I mean, you could say, and you need to look at everything. You can just say, well, this is what we voted on, so
Right.
this is the line in the sand on this one. You're gonna have to look at everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that transitional board that passes it on to the merged board is gonna have to stand up and say, we need to relook at everything.
Potentially.
So it's not necessarily locked tight.
No, but it's as tight as it can be. Because
It's at least got the most fixed numbers right now that you can work with.
Right, exactly, yeah.
Mr. Chair, can I ask you one more question?
Sure.
This is Ian with BCTV. The Wyndham Southeast Supervisory Union is an entity that Vernon is a part of.
Yes.
The Wyndham Southeast Supervisory District? Is
Will-
that the
will be-
term?
That's still to be determined, the name, but we can go
Okay.
with that for right now.
That is a different entity.
That's a different,
That
that's that
currently does
merged
not
board.
contain Guilford.
No, it does not contain Vernon.
Vernon.
Does
I
not contain
apologize.
Vernon.
Yeah.
That's the merged board that we're talking about.
And that board would be responsible for the budgets of the elementary schools within Brattleboro, Guilford, Putney,
And Dummerston.
Dummerston, and this
And-
high school board,
and-
and the WRCC board?
And the middle.
Is there any other entity that's part of that,
And EES.
which is Early Education Services?
Yep, and that's still to be determined because EES budget goes from February or March 1st to March 1st. They're on a totally different structure than anybody else anywhere. So we've been working with the regional office of Head Start. They would have to pay approximately a third of the year's budget upfront to get Head Start into our budget system, which is, of course, July 1 to June 30. So that's still to be determined, but yes, EES as well.
If I think I might be able to clarify for you, Ian, this warning for this January 9th meeting says the Wyndham Southeast Unified Union School District. So that is the entity, but it's still, we still have the WSESU Supervisory Union also as an entity. So it's two entities. That's why you could have what Ricky just referred to, the lopsided participation of Vernon and the SU. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah.
So, Sean, when I look at number 2, to swear in the members of the transitional board created in Article 9, who shall immediately assume office and serve until the voters of the new union district elect the initial members of the board of directors, and those members are sworn in and assume their duties. I assume that's where the transitional board sets the date for that election.
Okay, thank you.
Do you, the question begets questions. Could you, or is it public knowledge right now that the makeup of that traditional board, a transitional board?
Yeah,
It has what, 8 names right now?
The transitional board is 10 names. It's the chair and the clerk of the Brattleboro Town School Board, the Guilford Town School Board, the Dummerston Town School Board, the Putney Town School Board, and the BUHS number 6 board. So those 10 names.
Except that the Putney Town School Board, as clerk, decided she did not wish to do that, so it's Putney's chair and vice chair.
Okay. And that there is provision that if the chair and the clerk both can't do it or whatever, then that individual board can elect another person to take that one of those people's spots. But those 10 people are the transitional board.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Are we gonna have that conversation at this board level? If we are, when? The January 7th meeting?
Yeah, I mean, in theory,
Gives 2 days.
in theory, we could have that conversation right now. It's part of Act 46 discussion, so is there something you want to say in relation to that?
No.
Okay. Because right now it's you and me, and I don't see any of our peers. Oh, and Ann's going to be there from Putney, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so Ann will be on from Putney, but I don't see, Sean, I don't see any of our peers wanting to take that spot, and if I'm wrong by that, please tell me that I'm wrong by that on that transitional board.
We love you too. We want you to be our
Thank you.
right, everybody else?
You guys will do a great job. Well, I can't because of my involvement with the EES, so,
Okay.
there's my excuse.
All right. Okay, so anything else related to Act 46? The plan moving forward? I think just as a recap, we'll at our January 7th meeting, we hopefully will know more related to numbers for budgets, and we may know more related to Act 46 merger consolidation and any of some of those outstanding things we may know in preparation for the meeting on the 9th. And that meeting to the 9th is open to the public. And the start time on that is?
7 o'clock.
7 o'clock in the BUHS gym. Is that what I heard? Yes. So the public is welcome to come to that meeting as well, while those 10 folks make some decisions about what happens next. So, yes?
Question on that. For the adoption of the Articles of Agreement at the meeting on the 9th, does that require a vote of the public, or is that strictly an affair of the transitional committee?
So I'm going to have to find out, because I was not under the impression that we adopted the articles. The articles have been given to us because we did not merge voluntarily. So we have some leeway, there can be some amendments, but there are some that cannot be amended at all. So it's not an adoption of these. There are things laid out in these that, for instance, the grades operated or tuitioned in academic years, it tells us exactly what we have to do with that. So
my understanding for the Articles of Agreement is that when we did not merge voluntarily, we lost all opportunity to have a voice in what the Articles of Agreement were. The Articles of Agreements were given to us by the Board of Education, and we have to live within those. Like Lyle said, there's some leeway in them, some places to make amendments for certain things, but for the most part, they're given to us. These are our marching orders, and we need to do it.
Okay, but I still wonder if there's any point during that meeting where there might be a vote of the people from the towns. You say the public's invited,
Right.
but does the public actually participate in any aspect of that meeting on a voting basis?
The wording doesn't.
Not yet, not to my knowledge.
Okay.
I mean, but it is a public meeting, and I think as we saw tonight here, there's a lot of questions from some folks that know a lot of this stuff, that have been to a lot of the previous meetings and are aware of a lot of things, and we still have questions. So I wanted to extend the public's coming to that meeting, just so that as things move forward with elections and other things, there's hopefully less and less questions, and we're answering those questions.
You know, Frank did make that comment at one of the Finance Committee meetings, I think, about if something did or didn't happen at that meeting, it would be, in his words, a humdinger.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering, is the humdinger a likely scenario or not? But it doesn't have to be answered right now, it's just what I'm wondering
Let
about.
me just read number 4. To elect the following officers of the district from among the qualified voters of the district,
Oh, so there is a piece, I'm sorry.
which officers shall assume office upon election and serve for a term of 1 year or until their successors are elected and qualified. And then that's going to be a moderator, a clerk, and a treasurer. So-
I picture that happening much like we do with the
Right.
BU6
Barbara.
meeting. Yep.
Yeah. Oh, I see. So that isn't the body at large that came to the meeting.
Well, it does
Vote.
say all votes conducted from the floor, if you read up above in the very first paragraph. So that one that you just read, I do believe, is voters and votes. Anyone that's attending that meeting that's a registered voter can vote on that.
Which is similar to the way we do the BUHS meetings for those warnings as well. It's, we do it by a voice vote. We've always done by a voice vote at our meetings because it's pretty straightforward. There's really one candidate for each thing, so.
Mr. Chair, a question that arises. Is there a representative of the Agency of Education scheduled to be at this meeting?
No. I've been appointed the designee of the Secretary of Education for that meeting.
So, January 9th will be a busy evening. And hopefully, Franz, to answer your question, hopefully there will be no humdingers. But
I'm
there's
always
no,
on the lookout for them.
there's no guarantee. All right. Anything else related to Act 46? Questions related to all that? All right. Seeing none, is there a motion?
You mean to adjourn?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I
Let-
make a quick new business thing? Just a
Oh, sure.
quick question.
Yeah.
It's a procedural question, and it concerns executive session. Are we privy to any follow-up pertaining to whatever business took place there when it occurred?
At the executive session, not typically.
No?
Unless there's,
Any progress, any outcome, or is it just we sit in there and then make a
yeah, we
decision?
make the next decision, and that's typically how it happens. We could, because I think that there's, my experience tells me that there's usually limited things that can be shared even in an executive session with us,
Okay.
just in case something has to come back before us, so that we don't, something.
There's a process that has to go through even to go into executive
Yeah.
session again.
Right. And if we had to do it, if we had to do a similar matter with the same people, it would be, we need to know as little as possible until we walk in.
Right, it's difficult to talk specifics, and I get that, I'm trying to be sensitive to it, but, one and done, and,
Yeah,
okay.
it's hard.
You know what I'm saying?
I do understand, yeah. It is definitely hard, but it's what we have to do usually.
Thank you.
Yep. All right. Anything else for us tonight? New business, old business? No? Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
There being no further business before this board, I move that we adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned. See you, everybody have a nice holiday, see you on